Hi friends, I'm Gio, and welcome back to my channel. This week's story has a rather long title. I wrote a song back in high school telling my best friend I loved him. I finally let him read it when we were 22. A gay story about coming out. Also, I would appreciate it if you could leave me some comments at the end. I tend to be writing longer stories these days because I really get into the characters. But that isn't always convenient for people to listen to. I would like to hear your opinion. Would you enjoy longer stories, all laid out even if they're an hour long? Or should I divide them up into 30-minute sections? Let me know. Anyway, let's begin. Tuesday night, I waited before the tiny stage in the restaurant called Gary's Italian Grill, off Carson Avenue, located near downtown Las Vegas. Not the Strip, but the old downtown, the place with its own special kind of charm. Angela Caputo, barkeep and co-owner, wiped down the mahogany bar, the shade of light coffee, with a white cloth that smelled of lemon oil. Its sharp tang cut through the mingling scents of beer and cheap cologne. It was open mic night, just like every Tuesday, but it gave me a chance to see how my poems sounded in front of living people. Not the mirror, not my dog Byron, not my philodendron Tennyson. I'm still deciding if my professor qualifies as living people. I dragged my worn penny loafers over the polished oak flooring, imagining fish swimming just under the surface in an attempt to hide my nervousness. I already felt warmth in my armpits. Good thing I wore my old tweed jacket. Getting up in front of people to read my poems always terrified me, especially when someone from my old high school was there. The grill lay smack dab in the middle of the old neighborhood, just 5 blocks from Old Mojave Ridge High School. The MRH Stallions. Go Stallions! Days I'd rather forget, but every so often, memory rears like a xenomorph. Yeah, I like horror movies, especially with the right guy sitting next to me, sharing a bucket of popcorn. It wasn't just the people, insert Cameron, I'd like to forget. It was the person staring back at me from my senior year yearbook. Life plays games like that, bringing you back to the places and people you thought you'd left behind. Like Gary, always a steady presence. Did he ever know I was gay and crushed on him hard? I don't think so. It's not like I stood on the corner wearing rainbow trench coats, but I think people figured it out, even though I never officially came out. The light buzz of conversation tickled the air, mingling with the occasional clinking of ice. I waited by the old stand-up piano, sitting on the back corner of the stage, its dark wood finish gleaming in the dim bar lights. Gary always kept it tuned and polished. He used to sing and play back in high school, a mean rendition of Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven. Sometimes he still did. Sitting in the shadows, I would watch his fingers dance across the keyboard, his voice pouring into perfection, practicing for hours. Even now, his voice haunted me, stirring memories of the love I once felt for him, and maybe still did. Looking back, I wasn't just terrified of what everybody thought. I was terrified of what I thought of myself. And Gary. Gary was the only one who made me feel like maybe I could belong, even if he never realized how I felt about him. Ladies and gentlemen, the MC, Mr. Gary Caputo, yelled, his voice booming like an announcer on a Broadway show. He and Angela are brother and sister. In his hand he held a silver, old-fashioned microphone, the spotlight reflecting off its surface. He waved an arm like a game show hostess and drew all eyes to me. Allow me to present our very own award-winning Poet Laureate, my longtime friend, Mr. Rupert Hensley, with his new poem for your listening pleasure. Gary said poem, not in its usual pronunciation, poem, but split it along the vowels, poem, pronouncing each syllable like a separate car on a freight train moving at 70 miles an hour. The crowd of 24 people clapped politely. I bet most of them are here for karaoke night, scheduled to start in 30 minutes. Gary handed me the microphone and whispered, "Knock 'em off their stools, Rube." His cologne, sweet with a touch of citrus, made me long to hold his hand, if only for a heartbeat. I caught his glimpse, his eyes smiling, sincere, as if he believed in me. Me and Gary go way back. We both survived high school together, went on the senior trip to France together, double dated for prom together. He with Jenny, I with her friend, I don't even remember her name. But it was the closest thing I had that qualified as a date with Gary. I should have told him I was gay. Figured I didn't need to. Everybody already teased me about it, especially Cameron. She and her gang made high school hell. My palms slightly moist, a forced smile on my lips. Tightening my grip on the mic, I said, "It's Rupert, not Rube. That's my old nickname from high school." The nice nickname, anyway. What I kept quiet about was how Gary used to pick up my books when someone bumped me in the hall, dumping me to the ground. She shall remain nameless, but we all know it was, cough, cough, Cameron and her gang. Or how he cleaned Vaseline off my locker dial when somebody smeared it all over it. Security cameras caught Cameron red-handed. And buying me a new lunch when somebody accidentally dumped it in my lap. If you guessed Cameron and her gang, you win the prize. Cameron and her gang called me Purdy Boy, a play on my name that I hated. Even in the modern age, bullies always picked on the alleged gay kids. Not because I existed or was different, but what better way to show you're better than everybody else than by picking on the loner who sat in a quiet hallway as far from the cafeteria as he could, just to get a quiet moment to eat lunch. Gary tried to help me. He never called me Purdy Boy. Honestly, I don't think I would have survived if not for him. Still, we were simply two ships that sometimes had the same class. I never knew why Cameron picked on me. Maybe because I had better hair. I don't know. I did have nice hair. Spent half an hour on it every morning. Still do. My best feature. My only feature. Light brown, copper highlights, lightly curly. The gunmetal ankh in my right ear dangled just past my hair. I wore it, that is my hair, not my ankh, longer back in high school. But because of Cameron, I sort of met Gary. Me, the nameless, nobody loner, afraid to look out of the shadows, but I wanted to be more than a friend who passes the time by quoting basketball stats. Not that I knew any. Believe it or not, and I'd prefer it if you didn't, I had a crush on Gary's wise-cracking wit, the way he could think of something quick, on the spot, like when he told Jenny that the reason I didn't ask her out was not because I didn't like her, but because of her dad, the Reverend, the man who, after I confessed about being gay, read me every scripture in the Bible against people like me. Reverend Hellfire and Brimstone, who made every boy feel scorched for even talking to his daughter. I guess Jenny had never believed the rumors about me. I didn't know peace until my senior year in high school, when Jenny was a cheerleader with the hots for some basketball star I didn't remember. Cameron, 17 and with a baby, was too busy making up credits so she could graduate. Fierce, cruel Cameron, hollowed out by exhaustion, her swagger gone as she shuffled between classrooms, her baby in the ground floor nursery by the office, and her clothes stained with baby food. I couldn't help but wonder if the baby's cries had reshaped her, chipping away at her sharp edges until only exhaustion remained. And Gary, he doesn't know how I feel about him. Effortlessly charismatic, as always, he had moved on from one short-term hetero romance to another, leaving me behind like an old yearbook no one cared to open. Gary, with the dreamy eyes and strong hands and the dimple on his cheek, he always tried to stand up for me when the other kids tormented me. Why do guys like me always crush on the knight in faded denim who is so far out of my league I'd get nosebleeds trying to climb up to it? Some part of me still hoped he'd turn, smile at me, and make me feel like I mattered. But high school was long gone. So was my chance of anything lasting. Thank God he and his sister opened the grill. Don't get jealous, Byron, but it's my second home. But I survived high school, and am now chasing after a literature major with an emphasis on poetry and a minor in philosophy. Here we are, 5 years later. I'm visiting his grill because it's close to my cheap attic apartment, and I need some place to hang out other than work and school. Neither one of us made it big. We were friends, but I was too scared to take the next step. But I can mourn lost opportunities and dream about what might have been. I sipped my drink, a pear blossom made with vodka, a touch of elderflower liqueur, and a touch of pear nectar. Gary or Angela always whips up one for me whenever they see me enter. I seldom said a word, but the way I lingered at the bar, how I tried to impress him with my dumb jokes and raw poems. Did he know that I once loved him? Or maybe still do? Or maybe he never noticed? Or didn't want to make it awkward? I should have trusted him all those years ago. Gary still cut a mean profile on those acid-washed, hip-hugging, skin-tight jeans, black New Balance slip-resistant sneakers, and a loose-fitting, navy blue Banana Republic button-down shirt that not only accentuated the curve of his biceps, it made him look hotter than I remembered. The twin silver studs in his ears, left over from his frat days, only added to his charm. His carelessly styled, sunlit lake blue eyes and smoky almond skin always reminded me of the could-have-beens. If I'd had the courage. Gary wasn't the kid I remembered. He'd grown into a man that I had fallen for, and never had the courage to tell outright. He wasn't the only familiar face I knew here tonight. That guy, 3 tables down, I think I had English with him. Each week it's someone else, an old classmate, a teacher, a face I vaguely remember. It's like the universe is conspiring to remind me of the parts of my life I've tried to leave behind. A couple of people started recording me on their phones, even Gary. Hesitating, I began my latest poem. He comes home late, smelling of greasy eggs and nostalgia, a pack of Oreos wedged in his pocket, a bottle of lemonade tea sweating in his grip. The audience didn't react. Angela filled a mug, the spigot loud in the sudden stillness. Someone's earbuds were too loud, playing a Miley Cyrus song from days gone by, faintly audible over the hum of the bar. Keys and wallets scatter like loose change on the teak Chippendale table, the table by the door, the table bought cheap from the thrift store, the one who thought dark wood meant permanence. He used to think so too, but permanence splintered along the odd scratch that stares at him now like an unfinished sentence. Somebody yawned. My heart sank a little. I had hoped for a better reaction. A polite cough sounded from the back. The paper football, a gift from a former crush who never knew. Pale and faded on the mantle of memory. But he wonders, does memory need a mantle? Or a dark wood Chippendale? Or a table to hold a ghost of love unrequited? Somebody clapped, thinking my poem had ended. Angela shook a shaker filled with ice. I let a smile dribble out as I finished the last stanza. He eats his Oreos, one by one, their crumbs dusting the scratch, their sweetness drowning thoughts of permanence. He eats to forget, but the table stays, the Tarkwood Chippendale table, the table by the door. The paper football stays, the scratch stays. The memory always stays, though never acted on, and he'll never know how I felt. Everybody mildly clapped. They always do. I bowed my head a little, glad for any kind of reaction. If they seemed to like it, maybe my professor would give me a B. The memory of the paper triangle continued. High school, junior year. It had been a bad day. Gary never knew how bad, or that I needed that fleeting moment. Mom had just walked out that morning, choosing to avoid rehab when she should have gone. A folded triangle flicked my way as Gary laughed and said, "Here, bet you can't even flick it straight." The paper football had landed in my lap. I flicked it back, and our game lasted a minute. Forgotten by him, but unforgettable to me. A moment of sunshine breaking through the clouds. It's still at home now, sitting in the translucent jade green glass tray reserved for my wallet and keys. A memory of regret, never acted on. Why did I come to Gary's every week? Maybe it was the faint, half-forgotten hope that Gary and I could be more than friends. Someday. Or maybe I just needed a little familiarity in a life strewn about by a tornado. Mom had come back in town last weekend, expecting everything to be the same. It wasn't. There was something about the way Gary made everyone feel seen, like I mattered, even back when I was just a nervous kid watching him from the back of the room. Maybe I needed a beer to drown in, a golden monkey ale, or a second pear blossom. Angela made the best. Wasn't that great, everyone? Give it up for Rupert Hensley, ladies and gentlemen, Gary yelled, clapping louder than anyone else in the entire room. And now for a special announcement. The 3-year anniversary of the bar is 3 weeks away. We are going to liven up open mic night. One night only, unless it earns big, 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 because who doesn't need a shot of cash with their shot of tequila? The best performance wins $500, cash, plus other valuable prizes worth up to dollars, to be awarded on the spot. Let's make it old time week. Everybody from Mojave Ridge High is welcome. I'm Gary Caputo, and I promise you the best impromptu high school reunion with better food and much better drinks. And we'll be open much, much later than the old high school. That got a bit more applause. I could definitely use $500 to help pay rent, after I spent all my money on tuition. Gary's words echoed through the room. My eyes swept the crowd, and stopped short when I saw Jenny, daughter of Reverend Hellfire and Brimstone, eyes glued to Gary. Funny how I remember her name, and not many others. I hope Cameron never shows up. Now for our final act, our fan favorite. Give it up for Homestead Maggie, all the way from the other side of the high school, with her amazing zither, Gary yelled. I clapped, along with the rest of the crowd. Maggie, like me, and a lot of the people who lived close, were regulars. I wouldn't call us friends, more like cousins we see every so often, catching up on each other's lives. Some we see every week or month, others every 6 weeks or on holidays. Funny how this place became a patchwork of past and present, people drifting in and out of my life, yet always circling back here to Gary's. Maggie, a grandmotherly 65, played on a time-worn handheld zither, gently using a small lever to tune the strings. This song was made famous by my hero, Johnny Cash, back in 1967. It's called Jackson, and my pretty great-granddaughter, her name's Lila, sings along every time. She goes to daycare just a block from here. Can you believe our good fortune? Her mom just got engaged. Not to Lila's idiot father, but a nice guy. As she played, Maggie sang in her old, fading voice a tender rendition of the country tune. I pulled up a seat at the bar and tapped my drink. Angela smiled her cute, impulsive smile and pulled out a shaker, filling it with crushed ice. She softly spoke to Gary, saying, "Talk to him. He'll understand," offering a quick, sisterly smile. Gary pulled up the stool next to mine. "I liked your new poem," he said, nodding at Angela, who brought him a golden monkey ale a second later. "It reminds me of high school." I fought the temptation to tell him how I felt and instead said, "Poems are best if they have something authentic in them, something you experienced yourself. It doesn't have to be the main element, but it adds a special charm the reader senses." "This one is the same way? Care to share?" Gary took a casual sip of his beer, looking every bit like the man I remembered from high school. Only now he had grown up, and grown irresistible. How could I tell Gary the poem was about him, that he had given me the paper football, that every time I saw him reawakened the old feelings? All through high school I had longed to tell him how I felt, but I chose the coward's way out, kept quiet, kept to the back of the class where no one would bully me. Angela set the new pear blossom before me, and I changed the hard truth to a softer one. I bought the Chippendale table at Goodwill a long time ago. Gary paused a long moment, staring at his beer, in a voice so faint even angels would struggle to hear it. He said, "I knew." His hand tightened on his beer. The faint scent of his cologne, that delicious, sexy scent, toyed with my thoughts, stirring both terror and something tender. My heart dove into panic mode. What did Gary mean? He couldn't suspect I was gay, could he? I remained silent, as if I hadn't heard him, holding the cold drink and feeling the condensation on my palm, waiting, straining to hear what Gary would say next. He said nothing, letting those two words stand like an apocryphal lightning bolt thrown down by God himself. Gary didn't look at me, only at his beer, as if denying the emotion I thought I saw in his eyes. What did he feel right now? Was he angry I had never told him? Annoyed I had never trusted him enough with the truth? Regretful that his kindness extended to someone who had hidden his true self on the other side of the mirror? A small part of my mind chuckled. What would people say if they knew I thought in metaphors? The main part of my mind swelled with trepidation. Gary waited for me to say something, but the only thing I could mutter was a simple, "When?" I couldn't keep the damn tremble from betraying my soul. Gary took a deep breath and a deeper sip of his beer. The moment we met, he finally glanced at me, fleeting, furtive, unreadable. My heart flatlined. He knew. Gary had always known. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't breathe. I forced myself to sip the pear blossom, finding salvation in the taste of the alcohol. I tried to smile, to make light of the car crash going on inside me, and failed. We shared a second moment of silence. Him nursing his beer, me nursing my drink. I forced a breath, forced my heart to restart, forced a calmness I couldn't feel. "High school was hard, I know," he said, his voice gentle, bringing a sudden wetness to my eyes. I wiped at my left eye, wiped at the moisture threatening to spill out like the floodgates at Hoover Dam, threatening my entire state of composure. I tried to say why, but nothing came out. My heart began to beat again, louder, stronger, a pile driver pounding into my chest. "It's my uncle's birthday today," Gary said. My uncle. He was really my cousin, but was 5 years older, so I called him Uncle. and he was gay. You're so much like him it hurts. His voice rushing faster and faster, a speeding train that couldn't stop, his hand letting go of his beer and taking mine. His hand was cold and slightly moist from holding the beer. The cold beer. He committed, the words choking his throat, strangling the emotions long trapped inside, cracking like a winter's branch holding too much snow. I loved him. I didn't care. He didn't survive. I felt Gary's pain, his loss, remembering my senior year, the bullies chanting, "Purdy boy." The ache had never gone away. The clink of ice, the quiet hum of conversations, all faded to the background, unheard. I'm sorry. I finished the sentence, letting my fingers close around Gary's fingers, his cold fingers. My fingers were warmer. I, hesitantly, fighting the fear that had always hidden inside, leaned into his shoulder, his warm shoulder covered with the loose-fitting navy blue Banana Republic shirt. I leaned into his pain, into the loss he still carried, and would always carry. Gary glanced at me, his face glistening, a tender wet that begged forgiveness, of understanding, of pain so deep it framed his very core. In the shared silence, as Maggie sang of Johnny Cash, her zither echoing out hollow, thin strands, we got married in a fever, hotter than a pepper sprout, and cocktail glasses clinking. We enjoyed the stillness, like lovers sharing a stolen kiss, though we never kissed, or had ever kissed. I never even knew if Gary was gay, or only held the tragedy inside. Instead, I melted. The cherished paper football on my Chippendale table sprouted to mind, a memory, a token of kindness I didn't understand at the time. Gary inhaled deeply, his chest inflating, letting out the breath, raggedly, turning slightly. My tears left dark tracks on his navy blue shirt. I wanted to say something, anything, to the man who had protected a scared, vulnerable, purdy boy back in high school. To the man who not only had to fight his demons, but tried to fight mine as well. He responded first, his arm, warm, strong, wrapped about my tweed-clad shoulders, and he whispered. I knew, because I was hiding too. A timid glance my way, a baby deer barely peeking out of the brushes. We had a moment's reflection, but only a moment. Boss, Angela jerked her thumb at the stage. Maggie had finished to the same kind of applause I had received, and she now told the crowd about how her 5-year-old great-granddaughter helped her make lemon chocolate chip cupcakes, but couldn't stop dunking her fingers in the lemony batter and licking them, or stealing the little chocolate chips when she thought Grandma wasn't looking. Next Tuesday? Gary asked, eyes seeking something. Forgiveness, maybe? Acceptance? Tuesday, I said, saluting him with the pear blossom. As he walked away, I finished my drink and walked home, alone, wondering exactly what Gary had meant when he said, I was hiding too. But I didn't go to bed. Vegas nights are hot, and my air conditioning only worked like half a popsicle. I changed into purple lounge pants, rummaged through an old box for my yearbooks, and took them, along with a can of iced lemonade tea, to my little balcony where I wallowed in high school memories. Even a loner can rack up a ton of signatures. Plenty of people play the game. How many signatures can you get? Since I sat in a corner, I was an easy target. I signed enough yearbooks to rival the king of the football team, and my books looked the same. Except for Cameron giving me one last dig, She had found my picture in the yearbook and signed both pages with a giant F-bomb and some kind of slur, which made me wonder if she had guessed my secret, but for some reason had kept quiet about it. And her name, in hooker red lipstick that must have taken half the tube. Flipping a couple pages back, I found Gary's picture. I'd circled it with a heart and little stars, and wrote a page number by it. It directed me to the middle of the book, the signature page. There, tucked into the right upper corner, almost hidden by random signatures, less random swear words, and a pair of lips where somebody in fuchsia-colored lipstick had kissed the book, was a little note, in handwriting I still recognized from reading his paper in English class. Gary's. Hey, bud, you don't know how often I wished I was you. Free. You could be you. Love, G. As I reread it and held the book, remembering those long-forgotten days of being a kid afraid to take the final steps out of the closet, a kid afraid to trust because the risk was too great. The note meant something different now. Was Gary still hiding in the closet, like me? I set the book down on the chair next to me. Gently, reverently, an old family Bible with the genealogy in it, layered with meanings no one else would understand. A page slipped out of the yearbook, not one of the glossy pages with photos and rushed signatures, but an old, faded, college-ruled paper. Its blue lines were still crisp even after all these years. It was written in black pen, the kind I always used back then, and covered with my too neat handwriting, because I thought writers had to have neat handwriting because they never used typewriters for their first draft. I've learned better. I slid the page into the light and held my breath. A poem, or maybe song lyrics. The little notes on the side were my feeble attempts to write music. Maybe one of my first. I read the first line, remembering the tune I had spent hours composing and days creating the perfect lyrics. My breath, a sudden lightning storm in my chest. Chip, Gary, Gary, love of my soul. A stupid line from a stupid poem from a stupid amateur, written by a stupid, screwed-up loner of a closeted gay kid who hated the world. I cried. My soul shattered into a million petals, slowly fluttering into the wind. Yep, I think in metaphors. I went inside, poured myself a glass of Chablis, and set my playlist to Chosik's random song generator. Sitting down, I held a pillow, sipped a little, and let the familiar melancholy of high school wash over me. A song came on, Human, by Rag and Bone Man, and something about Don't Put Your Blame on Me. Something about its chords, or its tunes, or its haunting sound captivated me. It said the words my emotions were afraid to speak. I grieved high school. I grieved what could have, should have, might have been. I grieved the scared kid who couldn't stand up for himself, who had no choice but to tolerate the Camerons and the Jennies and the Reverend Hellfire and Brimstones of the world. The teachers who looked the other way because they were too busy or didn't want to get involved in high school's pain. The next morning, Dawn found me asleep on the couch, the priceless yearbook slipped to the floor, and the empty glass of wine on the table beside me. My neck hurt from the awkward angle I had slept at. Oddly, I felt like a kaleidoscope of monarchs lifting their stained glass wings as they took flight off a bright field of red milkweeds. Look at all the metaphors. I must be feeling better. I took my paper and pen and wrote a 10-line poem about kaleidoscopes in 5 minutes. It was Tuesday again. It had been a week. Blessed Tuesday, the quiet sanctuary where we all brought our stories, our sorrows, and our songs. The 10-line poem I'd written rested in my pocket. I sat on a stool, waiting for my turn on stage. Gary looked at me, sadness clouding his eyes, grief staining them with unshed tears. "We'll talk after," he said. His hug felt both fleeting and heavy, like a man trying to hold together the pieces of himself before hurrying off to deal with a man who had had 5 beers too many. Maggie was the number before me this time. She played on her zither, smiling at her memories as she sang Johnny Cash's Ring of Fire. Her thin voice brought humor and warmth to the room. I longed to talk to Gary, needed to at least say hi. Outside, neon lights buzzed like electric daydreams, but inside, Maggie's zither was a world of its own. Gary's grill was our little universe away from the craziness of the world. We had our own bit of crazy here. Angela, the bartender, never showed up to work. Something about food poisoning, and Gary was behind the bar, all night, non-stop. Margaritas and mojitos for hours straight. When he got his second, he set down a pear blossom in front of me. Its alcoholic sweetness relaxed me, sending me into that soft mood that I needed after today. My professor had hated my new poem. Not just hated it, ripped it to shreds with lines like, "Shallow imagery that even a dog could see through," or "Did you even count the syllables?" or "The rhythm is inconsistent. Wild zebras could compose better than you." Like an idiot, I tried out on the crowd. Maggie finished her song, and as usual told about her great-granddaughter's day in school. They'd made turkeys today, which made sense given it was November. Though in Vegas, November looks like most other months. She'd even brought the artwork with her, a brown circle with random colored feathers, googly eyes, and the word Mom written at the bottom. Maggie smoothed the feathers with her wrinkled thumb, as if she were gently stroking her great-granddaughter's hair. "Her name's Lila. We didn't think she'd make it. Her mother was so young, not even graduated high school. Lila's our miracle bundle of energy. I told her about prize night, and she and her mom's new fiancé are going to be here. After high school, my granddaughter pulled her life together, and she's a banker now. I'm so proud of them." It was my turn. I took the mic and one last sip of the pear blossom and said, "I wrote this last week, when I thought about now and then, about how life was back in high school. I didn't have it easy. I guess no one does. The first stanza is me back then. The second stanza is me today, 5 years later. I hope you enjoy." The crowd quieted down. A couple of people started recording me on their phones, even Gary. I smiled for him. Clearing my throat, I began. Fractured prisms of glass, shards of daylight spill like wine, spilling rainbows, colors plead, whispered dreams plead to endless skies. Wings flutter, light lives, thistledown flies, ghosts on the wind, a mirrored dance flows, life is motion, a soul reborn. Nobody clapped. Maybe they didn't think it had ended. I smiled and said, "That's it, folks. Something short for tonight." Now they clapped. A sweet little nothing that showed they had heard, and at least appreciated what I had created. I bowed. At least it was a better response than from my professor. I went back to my favorite bar stool, a fresh pear blossom waiting for me, ice chilled with a thin green straw sticking out. The professor's words replayed in my head like a bad song. Wild zebras, shallow imagery, rhythm inconsistent. I took a long sip of the pear blossom. The poem wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Who cared what the professor thought? "I liked it," Gary said, wiping the counter with the beige rag. The last act was on stage, somebody playing a guitar and singing a homemade song. Gary gave me a faint smile, one that barely curved his lips, but crinkled the corners of his eyes. He set a fresh napkin beside the pear blossom. "You are the most creative person I've ever met," Gary said. I don't know where you get your ideas, but they make me feel something every time. Did you bring any more? I had. The one that had been in my yearbook. The one I had written years ago. The one that showed me as an amateur. If my professor hadn't liked today's, he'd hate the one from high school. The other problem? It had Gary's name all over it. Chip, Gary, Gary, love of my soul, replayed in my head. A memory of lost love. Show me, Mr. Poet Laureate, Gary said, teasing. Hurry before I have to make another mojito. Hesitantly, no, scared out of my mind, I pulled the delicately folded paper from my pocket. I opened it as if it were made of solid gold sheets and smoothed it out. There it was, big and bold. Chip, Gary, Gary, love of my soul. I couldn't even come up with a word to replace Chip. Let me see, Gary said. Before I could move, he twirled the paper to face him, eyes scanning the entire poem, all 49 lines, and it was about him. It said so, everywhere. From a lonely high school boy with a crush on another boy, to Gary, from me. I should have burned it years ago. I wrote it back in high school, I mumbled, sucking on my lower lip. It's bad. Gary's eyes flickered over the lines, his face impassive, his lips twitched. Was that a frown or a faint smile? Gary's brows lowered. His mouth became one strict line. My heart froze. Did he like it? Of course not. My professor's voice replayed in my mind. Cut it in half. It's too long. It has no focus. You've wasted words when one would do. It has no rhythm. Did you ever read this out loud? Look at the spelling mistakes. Have you ever heard of meter? Electricity burned along every nerve in my body. I wanted to run. My right foot started to bounce up and down, uncontrollably. Why had I even shown Gary my failure? My throat felt dry, my chest tight. The paper in his hand suddenly looked fragile, too fragile, as if one wrong word could tear it in two. I couldn't look at Gary. Good thing I didn't have to, because Maggie called in her thin voice, Rupert, get your cute little butt over here. You think I'm going to win this without my good luck charm? Maggie waved me over like she was the star of the show. She was a ray of sunshine I desperately needed right this second. Somebody from the local paper wanted to get a group photo of everyone who performed tonight. He'd posted in the paper. Does anybody ever read those anymore? And on their website. He aimed his professional camera at us, the extra long zoom attachment clicking picture after picture. I counted at least 20 clicks. Gary had left the bar and gone to the stage. Remember, everyone, next week is our anniversary class reunion celebration. Winner gets $500. Plus, we have valuable prizes worth up to $, selected from my very own junk closet. This isn't just anybody's junk. I get promo goodies and posters all the time. It will be fun. Bring your family, your friends, and everybody from high school that you liked, or didn't like, I don't care, to cheer you along, and let's party. I'm going to win, Maggie yelled, raising her hands in victory as if she'd already won. I'm bringing my granddaughter. She's about your age, Rupert, and needs someone to look after her, like you. Maggie batted her eyes at me. I smiled, suddenly realizing I was about to say something to another person where everybody could hear for the first time. With a smile to hide my terror, I said, I'm gay, Maggie. I'd done it. I'd come out of the closet in front of everybody. I forced myself to breathe. Maggie's mouth opened into an O and then widened into a gap-toothed smile. Gay, straight, doesn't matter. You're still cute, and she needs someone responsible. Maggie winked, and then her eyes widened to the size of satellite dishes. Maggie leaned in, conspiratorially, her smile widening as if she'd uncovered the world's best-kept secret. "You have the hots for Gary," she shouted. "That's why you're sitting at the bar with him all the time. I bet he doesn't even know." Her voice carried above all the other conversations. My cheeks burned. I couldn't decide if I wanted to crawl under the bar or laugh with her. I glanced about. Thank God Gary didn't hear. That would be all I need tonight. I'd never live it down. Maggie would see to that. I couldn't find my high school poem. And I couldn't find Gary. Gary with the strong arms, my knight in faded blue jeans, smelling of citrus cologne. Had I gone too far? I should never have shown him that poem. Was he avoiding me? Or did he have to take care of something with the grill? I stopped by the grill a couple times that week and spoke to Angela. Gary hadn't come in since that night, the night I confessed my feelings through a lousy poem I'd written my senior year in high school. Chip, Gary, Gary, love of my soul. My poems that week were dark, melancholy, filled with broken light bulbs and broken toy robots and broken love. Love like static, still garbled, incomprehensible, danced in jagged geometries across the screen, cracked and peeling, before fading into darkness. Static cracks. Static, the death cry of the raven, fractured the shattered screen, throwing light on the wilted, dying plant. Our love, now lost without a purpose, the mirror, broken, screaming, reflected 1,000 distorted faces, each one shrieking in silence. Static cries. As static, as quiet as the headstone, the Esper arm twitched, sparks flying from its severed wires, reaching for the static in the sky, while the light bulb flickered its last breath, broken shards, broken love, praying to the static beyond the sky. Static lives, and then static dies. I was afraid for Gary. I was afraid for me. I forgot about the old high school poem, the poem that had destroyed the little hope I had left. For the first time since the terrors of high school, I let myself remember. Of being afraid of stopping by a drinking fountain for fear of somebody shoving my head into it, or even going to my locker because somebody would slam it on me, or going to the cafeteria and being constantly on guard for flying French fries smacking into my head. I closed myself up in my apartment, holding my dog Byron and staring at my philodendron and crying, cursing the day I had ever written such a stupid piece of juvenile crap, and twice cursing me for finding it in my yearbook. I grew up in one twisted, dark night, a night that forced me to confront the darkness inside and realized that I'm only human. It was Tuesday again. I had nothing I wanted to share at open mic night, so I decided not to go to the anniversary special for Gary's Grill. No way I'd share the darkest part of me. No way I wanted to see any of them. Maybe I'd go the week after that. Maybe not. I hadn't missed a week in more than a year. I'm allowed. Tuesday, the day of the anniversary, I shared my dark poem with my class, with my professor, not caring what they saw in it, not caring about life, only worried about how I might have destroyed Gary's life with my infantile crush. "It's not your usual style," my professor said, an unusual delicateness in his tone I'd never heard before. I merely smiled, but I didn't want to reveal the cracks in my soul, the sharp edges that threatened my sanity, the fragments of my emotion. "I know what you'll say," I said. "The rhythm is off, the meter is non-existent, it doesn't follow any syllable structure, and good luck finding any structure at all. I know it's bad." "Not bad," my professor said. "Raw. Poetry can be an exercise in math, cold and logical. But for some of us, it's a vehicle to discover ourselves. Let it become that vehicle for you. A word of advice: don't be alone. Hide in the shadows if you must, but write what you feel, what you observe. Discover your pain, your truth, and let it sing. Nobody else sees the world like you." I nodded. The professor picked up my poem, reread it, and handed it back to me. "I've seen you put yourself out there at Gary's. Don't let whatever is happening inside you stop you. I'm giving you an A for this, for the self-discovery it shows." The way his voice wavered told me he had gone through something similar. I went to Gary's that night, wearing black to blend into the shadows. I took my usual seat at the bar, doing my best to remain invisible. I reread my latest poem, the dark poem, the poem reflecting my pain, and left it on the counter. Angela was back, and she slid a pear blossom toward me, pausing to read my poem, my dark poem about broken robots, dying static, and broken love. She lingered a moment, her brows knitting together as she read, her easy smile fading into something quieter, sadder. "Deep," she said softly. The weight of her voice heavier than the whiskey on the rocks she turned to pour, but not before shooting me another look that lingered, equal parts sympathy, reliving her own demons, and understanding. I turned around as Gary, my love, the man of my dreams, stepped on the small stage and introduced the night. His glance flickered on me. Shame tightened my chest. I should never have come. Taking a napkin, pale white and pure, I scribbled what came to mind. Shadows claw through windows closed, shutting out everything around me, even my drink, my delicious sweet pear blossom, nectar of the gods. There they were, student body president, class clown, the old basketball players, some kids from the art show. They clustered together, long-lost brothers who hadn't seen each other for years, yelling, screaming, on the road to a huge hangover. A child's laugh made me look up. To the left, Maggie, with her great-granddaughter, Lila. Her granddaughter, Cameron. A man holding Cameron's hand, insert fiancé, and 3 of Cameron's friends, insert gang. I should have guessed. I'd had enough clues. Cameron held Lila's hand, laughing and joking with her fiancé and her old girl gang. She wore black stiletto heels, black slacks, and a lime green silk blouse with an air of understated elegance. Gone was the ragged high schooler fighting to graduate and raise a child. And yet, looking at her now, polished, poised, laughing freely, I still saw her shadow, the bully with an attitude bigger than Thunder Mountain. Despite the grill being crowded, and Maggie's status as a popular regular, there was a peculiar bubble around Cameron and her group, an unspoken distance that no one seemed eager to cross. Conversation shifted away from their table, like waves breaking around a rock. Even the waiter lingered at other tables before approaching theirs, as though the space carried its own quiet tension. Seeing Cameron brought back memories, and not the good kind either. I was back in high school. The final project for science was a homemade Esper arm, a replica of something I'd seen online. I'd collected old electronics and LEDs and parts from an old drone to make it work. Using the drone's remote control and some of its circuits, I'd even figured out how to make the claw-like fingers move. I'd spent more than 20 hours, and Dad paid several $100s to get me the parts. To me, it was poetry in motion, a symphony of blinking lights, moving parts, and dreams of something bigger than myself. Mom was AWOL by then, who knows where, and my project was too big to fit on the bus. Dad drove me to school that day, dropping me off 7 minutes before the final bell. He drove off, wishing me luck. I climbed the stairs, one by one, to the 3rd floor, balancing my fragile robotic arm, dodging other kids, a janitor, and somehow survived to the top. Something clanked on the ground. I turned around to see if I had dropped something. Slam. Somebody punched my kidneys. Sharp and sudden, I tumbled forward, catching myself on the railing. I lost control of the Esper arm, watching helplessly at the slow fall of my science project. The Esper arm, complete with wires and LEDs with a remote control to move the fingers, as it tumbled down the stairs, breaking, wires flailing, bits of circuits sparking. The project I'd spent 20, 30, 40 hours on, shattering. The 8 AA batteries breaking loose, bouncing slowly down the stairs like cylindrical ping-pong balls. The electronics shorted, releasing a jagged burst of static, a crackling, chaotic noise that filled the stairwell, drowning out their laughter for a fleeting moment before fading into silence, failing, reflecting the grade I would receive, the shrieking laughter of Cameron and her friends right behind me, my disgrace little more than a game to them. Cameron stood at the center of it all, her hand still raised from the punch, while her friends held their phones high, capturing every second of my humiliation, each one ensuring my shame would live on beyond the stairwell. Cameron didn't need to record it. She was the star of the show. The sudden heat in my eyes, the feeling of helplessness, powerlessness, the shame of being the target of her cruelty once again. The janitor silently knelt beside me, collecting the shattered parts of my project. He didn't say much, but the small pat on my shoulder as we tossed it all away felt like the only kindness I'd known that day. Did my teacher care? She barely glanced at me, her tone flat. "You should have brought it before school," she said, handing me a demerit slip for being tardy. The words stung more than the F she crawled on her clipboard before moving on, leaving me to stew in silent humiliation. What a great word. Powerlessness. A word that fits its job perfectly. Heavy, unyielding, inescapable. A noun and a verb at the same time, at least in my mind. I turned away, never really noticing when somebody with a guitar got on the stage and played, or when Maggie sang Johnny Cash's Hurt. I couldn't believe that the man in black had done a cover for a 9 Inch Nails song, and now Maggie, in her sweet, thin, aged voice, was singing it. Gentle, tender, almost a lullaby. Trent Reznor would be horrified. Or ecstatic. Can't ever tell with him. Lila sang along, and the crowd clapped in time to the simple melody, intertwining with her voice. When it was over, Cameron and Lila cheered the loudest, and of course Maggie had to introduce them to everybody. "I told you I'd bring my Cameron and Lila, and of course Cody, Cameron's fiancé. They've set a date." "I've always dreamed of getting married on Valentine's Day," Cameron said, uncharacteristically blushing. She smiled wide as she held up her left hand and the ring on it. Her girlfriends all cooed their congratulations. The crowd's applause was polite, but understated. More for Maggie, I suspected, than for Cameron. "Do you have something?" Angela whispered, nodding to my poem on the bar. I took a sip of my drink, my hand shaking, and said, "Not really. Not tonight. Not in front of them." Angela didn't know about my past. Didn't understand. How could she? She meant well. Her smile almost broke my heart. "You have to stop hiding, Rube. Gary wants you up there. We like your poems." "I need to feed Byron, so I'm going home." Grabbing my hand, Angela pulled me to the small stage, past Maggie and her precious zither, Cameron and her gang, and 5-year-old Lila, and Cameron's fiancé, past the student body president, the class clown, the old basketball players, the cheerleaders, some kids from the art department. All their faces blurred in my mind, their names forgotten. She dragged me up to the stage and said, "Give it up for our one and only poet laureate, Gary's own Rupe Hensley. As Gary often says, and most of you already know, Rupe's the most creative man in Vegas. She let go of me and started clapping. It's not ready, I said to nobody in particular. Somebody yelled, "Hey, it's Purdy Boy," the nickname I hated. I wanted to run, hide, crawl under the bar, but I stood my ground. "That's him," Maggie said, her eyes wide, her grin wider, as she pointed Cameron's face towards me. "That's the man I was telling you about. He's cute, smart, and more creative than anybody I know. The only problem is he's gay, so the girls will have a little competition. With his brain, though, that man is on the express elevator to Silver Linings." As Cameron noticed me across the room, her movements froze, like a marionette whose strings had just been cut. Her eyes locked onto mine, wide and unblinking, a storm of recognition brewing behind them. Her mouth fell open, as if words were struggling to rise, but no sound escaped. Then slowly, it closed again, her lips pressing tightly together. Her hand shot to her handbag, clutching it like a lifeline, a nervous, almost involuntary gesture. Was this fear? Could it really be terror that danced across her features? The same Cameron who once quartered me sneering, with her gang acting as her armor? The same woman who now walked the world surrounded by layers of protection? Her great-grandmother's watchful wisdom, her daughter's innocent presence, her fiancé's sturdy embrace? And yet, here she was, looking at me, a poet, the kid she used to bully, with visible hesitation. It didn't make sense. I must have been misreading her. It had to be something else. Surely someone like Cameron wouldn't be unsettled by the shadow of a boy she and her gang had humiliated over and over again. God, I hated high school. "Rupe, get started," Angela quietly hissed, maintaining her smile. A couple of people started recording me on their phones. Except Gary. I didn't see him. My stupid, idiotic, juvenile, high school piece of crap song had ruined our friendship. Clutching the fragile paper, I mustered a smile and began to read the words of the dark poem. Static, Esperharms, broken lights, they'd think it's silly. My raw pains poured into those words, felt heavier with every syllable, each one reverberating in the silence of the room. I knew my old classmates wouldn't understand. I never had had the courage to tell Gary about what had happened, about Cameron's push, and the destruction of my project. But I read anyway, a catharsis long time coming, in front of classmates I barely remembered, and in front of the woman who had bullied me all through high school. I released my pain. I stood there afterwards. Only silence drifted from the crowd, waiting for some sign, any sign, that someone had heard. Cameron, in her black stilettos and lime green silk blouse, folded her arms, prim and posed, staring at me. Angela, still standing next to me, gave me a swift thumbs up, smiling. No sign of Gary. "Mommy, what's an Esper arm?" Lila asked. "Is it a robot arm?" "Shush, honey. We'll talk later," Cameron said. Lila's insistent voice broke the silence. "Why does the robot have a broken arm, Mommy?" With a deep inhale, Cameron's eyes stared at me, narrowing. "I don't know. Now be quiet," she said, but her perfect composure seemed less perfect, like a crack or a regret had made ripples. There's my answer. No one understood. I folded the paper over again and again until it was a small, insignificant square. Then I let it fall to the floor, watching it flutter down like the last breath of a dream, thunking like a wad of used gum as it hit the floor. Reliving high school had been a mistake, but dumping my feelings into the poem had not. Time to feed my dog, Byron. I stepped off the stage, brushing past the crowd of faces I'd once known. High school had broken me once, And tonight, I thought it had again. But the words were out there now, for better or worse. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to begin healing. "Good job, Rupe," Angela said, squeezing my arm and pulling me back to the bar. "Gary would be proud. He's got a surprise for you, but you have to wait." She turned to the crowd. "Everybody, give our favorite shy guy a hand." She raised my hand like I was a champion. "Go, Purdy boy," one of Cameron's friends yelled, snickering into her beer as she gave a drunken chuckle. Except for Cameron, the other friends chanted, "Purdy boy, Purdy boy, Purdy boy," then laughed as if it was the funniest joke in the world. Maggie looked confused, joined in the chant. No one else in the room did. Not the class president, not the class clown, not Jenny and the cheerleaders. Nobody. "You guys be quiet," Cameron whispered, her hand fastening around her fiancé's like a death grip. "Why do you four keep calling him that?" Angela said. "It's been years, and around children. Grow up. Haven't you done enough to Rupe?" "It's okay," I said, suddenly afraid that Angela knew. Of course she must know. She's Gary's sister. I wanted to crawl under the bar and die, but Angela's grip kept me in place. "What's wrong with it?" Maggie said. "It's kind of cute." "Grandma, just drop it, okay?" Cameron shouted. All conversation in the grill suddenly stopped. "Just because he's gay doesn't mean you can't be friends," Maggie persisted. "That will never happen," Gary said, suddenly behind me, "if you saw the video." Taking my hand in his voice trailing off. "If my sister had seen that happen to me, you can bet Cameron would be in a hospital bed." "Or the morgue," Angela said, still holding my arm. "It happened so long ago," Cameron said, trying to pretend nothing was wrong. "It's old news. It was just me and my girls having fun. Nobody was hurt." "Did you break somebody's robot arm, Mommy? Is that why everyone's mad at you?" Maggie set her zither on a table and looked at me. I mean, really looked at me. Then she looked at Cameron. "What video?" Cameron's face hardened, but she pursed her lips. "It's nothing, Grandma," Cameron said, avoiding the steady stare Maggie sent her way. "It's what Rupe's poem was about, isn't it?" Cody, the fiancé, said. He strode over to the small stage, to the small piece of folder paper I had dropped. His eyes flickered as he read the carefully written words, then reread it, his face clouding over right before a tornado was about to touch down. "It never went viral," Gary said, his voice chill and any good humor he had evaporated. "I think it only got 150 views, but some of us saw it. Why do you think nobody wanted to do with Cameron after that? Normally, when somebody has a kid, all the girls pitch in to help, or throw a baby shower, or offer to babysit, or something. Nobody did. Nobody wanted to help the meanest bully and her gang. We avoided them. It wasn't planned, but Cameron was dead center in a school-wide shun campaign." "Is there something you never mentioned?" Maggie said to Cameron. "You did tell her about the more than 50 times you smeared Vaseline on Rupe's locker," Gary said. "Rupe didn't know about most of it because I tried to clean it up. Then the constant harassment every moment they found him in the hall. I don't know where he hid during lunchtime because he dared not show up in the cafeteria. But after Cameron tried pushing him down the stairs, we were lucky to see him anywhere in school. Easily the most talented kid in school. Do you know how many competitions his poems won? Cameron and her gang had it in for him bad." "Why?" Maggie asked, her voice hard, a scalpel slicing away to the truth. She faced Cameron, not quite angry, only confused. "What did he do to you?" "Don't listen to them, Grandma. I don't know why everybody is so serious," Cameron said, a sweet smile on her face. But she nervously glanced at her friends. "We were only having a little bit of fun. It's no big deal. Besides, I've changed." From across the room, Jenny, daughter of Reverend Hellfire and Brimstone, folded her arms, her voice sharp. "I remember that video. It wasn't funny then, and it's not funny now. We were kids back then, didn't know what to do, so we did what high schoolers always do. Cameron and her groupies were never invited to anything, never included in activities or prep assemblies. Not that they went anyway. We didn't want what happened to Rupe happening to us, so we avoided Cameron like she was the devil herself, which she was. Gary locked eyes with mine. When I saw that video, you don't know how bad I wish I had been there. I'm sorry, Rupe. Life is full of regrets, and that is one of mine. The look on his face was the same look as when he told me about his uncle. He had been afraid I would do something stupid. My eyes blurred. A surprising voice spoke up. Cody, the fiancé, folding the small paper back up into a little tiny rectangle and handing it back to me. He took his fiancé's hand, his face stern. I've never seen this side of you. Never even suspected that you could act this way. Has the woman I fell in love with been a lie this entire time? Tell me why. It was a silly game, one of her friends said. She was about to say more, but Cameron whirled and yelled, Shut up, you stupid cow. You're worse than Purdy Boy. Shut up. Her friend stood a little taller, her smile a wicked, dangerous thing. Guess I know where I stand, girlfriend. Bye. As she started to walk away, she yelled back, Rupe, honey, it wasn't anything to do with you or your being gay. Cammy made a bet with us that she could get you to run away from school. Didn't like how everybody loved your poems or your hair. She was jealous of your weave because it wasn't a wannabe fake piece of crap like hers. She lost the bet. Good thing you stayed out of the lunchroom. We had water balloons. Good luck with the wedding, Cammy. Because I plan on being there with water balloons. We didn't get to use them before, but wait till you see my curveball. Bye, sugar. It wasn't just the one friend that left, but all three. Cameron was alone. Cody let go of his fiancé's hand. His tongue briefly licked his lips, then he shook his head, never taking his eyes off of Cameron. It was 5 years ago. It means nothing. Cameron pleaded with her eyes. Tell them, Rupert. Please, don't ruin everything. I'm sorry. Her voice choked as the past caught up to her. I didn't mean to be mean. It was just some fun. Maybe I took it a little too far, but I didn't mean it. Please, I've changed. I promise. I need time to think, Cody said, offering a deep breath and a look of sympathy my way. Maggie, your performance was excellent, as was your poem, Rupe. You both get my vote. Goodbye. He walked off, his footsteps echoing like the rhythm of drums as a man marches to the electric chair. Cameron's face went through a cascade of emotions. Shock, anger, betrayal, fury, aimed at me. She faced me, once again the Cameron I remembered, hands curling into fists, mouth snarling, the same face as when she tried to push me down the stairs, when my science project with the Esper arm fell down the stairs instead of me. Her eyes narrowed. I'd never felt hatred like that before. You've ruined everything, she shrieked, calling me every slur she could think of. She lunged. I cringed, stepping back into Gary, into his warmth, his solid body, into his protection, into his love. Cameron, in her rage, was an unstoppable force, ugly with her primal yell. Lila screamed, Mommy, don't break his robot arm. A hand reached out, backhanding Cameron to the floor, a dot of blood under her nose. Angela stood between me and Cameron, eyes shooting fire. Rupe's one of our family, a Caputo, Angela spat. Consider me Rupe's bigger, meaner sister. He's about to be my brother anyway. If you ever come after my family again, I will find you. Or Grandma Caputo will. She's meaner than you. Gary's arm wrapped around me, a safe haven in the chaos. Heaven help you if you ever meet Great Uncle Angelo, he said, his quiet voice a foghorn in the grill. His vengeance is biblical. Maggie took Lila's hand and walked to her zither. I think you'd better leave. You've embarrassed me and Lila enough for one night. Go home. We will have a lot to talk about later. She helped Lila into a chair, and she took one next to it. Cameron left, the fury draining her as she dabbed at her nose. She couldn't compare to my big sister. I took a breath. Angela smiled and said, "Drama's over, folks. Drinks are on the house, but only for the next 15 minutes. Your turn, Gary. Rock the stage, little bro." Gary led me to the side of the room, to the dark wood upright piano, let go of my hand, and sat down on the bench. "I've been practicing all week on something special." "I hope you like it, Rupe," he said, and began playing the music I had spent so much of my senior year writing. It was a little different, but it was better. When he sang the first notes, his voice tender, raw, pure. I cried. "Chip, chip, Gary, love of my soul." I sang along, verse after verse, until we got to the final chorus. He had changed the words. "The love I carry, though you don't see, Tuesdays are special. Will you marry me?" His eyes, wet with love, gazed at me, the longing of a new puppy in them. I kissed him, my cheeks wet. Our first kiss. I whispered, "Yes." Thank you, everybody, for joining me, and for staying to the end. I know this is a longer story, but I would really like your input. Should I break up longer stories like this into multiple parts, like part 1, part 2, part 3, or just keep it together, even though it's an hour long? Let me know. I'd appreciate it. In the meantime, the surgery did go okay. I had, what did they call it, an incarcerated hernia. It meant that the intestinal tracts had leaked out through a gap in my intestinal wall and were hanging down. It sounds kind of graphic. However, the surgeon said it wasn't bad. He'd seen cases where it was much, much worse. Anyway, it's getting better, and much, much better. And because it's healing, the rest of me is healing faster too. Thank you for your love and your prayers. I appreciate it. We'll see you with the next story. And I would appreciate it if you told me longer stories or divide the long ones up into half. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you so much for your love. Peace and hugs to everybody. I love you all.